Welcome to MaatSpeaks, and welcome as we begin today's show. I'm excited about today's show. So if you are new to this channel,
Welcome as we
y'all.
begin today's show. I'm excited about today's show.
Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. Okay, so if you're new to this
About today's show.
if you're new to this channel, here at MaatSpeaks, we aim to bring balance back in our communities through the principles of truth, justice, order, balance, reciprocity, harmony, and righteousness. And we do that by looking inward. And if you want to know more about how we use the principles in our daily lives, you can check out my channel at MaatSpeaks. But today's show, we have some amazing women that have joined me today. And so we are going to discuss and get to the bottom of sisterhood amongst the diaspora. And of course, we do not represent the entirety of the diaspora, but we all come from different backgrounds and have different cultural experiences. So we want to unpack some of these issues and see how we can combat them and see about coming some solutions so that we can all come together. So welcome, ladies.
Hello, peace, Maya and Hanifa. How are you?
Peace. I'm so happy that you joined me today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah.
Same here. Thank you, Maat.
So Colette, over the top WME, she will be joining us. She is running a little late, but she will be joining us later. So I wanted these ladies to come on because they all represent different parts of the diaspora. And so before we begin, I want each of them to talk about their channels because Hanifa just started her channel. Kat has a channel. And then when Colette gets here, she can talk about her channel. But whoever wants to go first, just let us know about your channel, where we can find you.
Yeah, I'm Hanifa. You can find me on YouTube you can see my name, Hanifa Nayela. I literally started my channel like a week, not even quite 2 weeks yet ago. And my channel is pretty much, I'll have different things, but it's more so focused on like self-development, some spirituality, and definitely some diasporic conversations will happen there as well. But I'm definitely more focused on individual self-development because I feel like everything begins there. So check it out when you get a chance. Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Kat. You can find my channel at Cartoon Cat. I will probably put it in the chat, but yeah, I touch on similar topics. I focus on my country specifically. I talk a bit about Sudan and East Africa. I also touch on some kind of manosphere, you'd call it, topics. We kind of talk about relationships a little bit over there. So it's a little bit of everything. My channel is also relatively new. I probably only had it for about a month or so. So it's a hodgepodge of different things until I find my lane, really. But yeah, come and subscribe, and hopefully you'll enjoy our content over there.
Okay, great. Thank you, ladies. Okay, so yes, check them out. And so before we get into the topic, I do want to do a little housekeeping. Make sure as you come in, you hit the like button and subscribe to this channel so that you can just let me know that you're enjoying the content. And there are also a few ways that you can support my channel. I have, let's see, you can buy me a cup of tea. I drink tea every day. So you can buy me a cup of tea here. And also there's my Cash App if you want to support me in that way. Okay, so we're going to get into the topic here. And so, ladies, I want you to kind of talk about I want us to first start talking about our cultural background. So I'll start. I am I was born in the United States. I'm from Louisiana, the southern part of the United States. And so um, I was, I lived in Louisiana pretty much all my life. We just recently moved to Georgia. And so my both my parents are kind of from the southern part. And as far as I know, like my dad's parents are from Texas, my mom's parents are from Louisiana. So, you know, just kind of in that part of the woods. And so I do consider myself a Pan-Africanist. I have been studying different spiritual systems and our history. And so, since I consider myself that, I knew that I need to learn how to develop relationships with other people and our sisters in other parts of the world. And so that is why I'm definitely excited about this conversation and meeting these wonderful women that I have met in these YouTube streets. And so, and one of you can, or both of you, when whoever wants to go first, can let me know, tell us about your cultural backgrounds.
Yeah, I was born in Sudan, Khartoum specifically. However, I've lived in the UK, oh gosh, 35 years, so, you know, a very long time. I'm still very much connected to Sudan. I visit there as much as possible, and I have a great respect and admiration for my culture, my people. I like to talk about it on my channel because I don't think a lot of people know about Sudan as much as maybe some other countries in Africa. But in terms of my spirituality, I was raised in a Muslim home, although I've never been a practicing Muslim. And I spent probably my 30s kind of exploring different spiritual practices, maybe looking at just some different religions, but nothing has really stuck, you know. So I'm still on that journey to find something that really meshes with me and sits with me and who I am and where I see myself, going. So yeah.
Okay. So where can I start? All right. So I am a Caribbean woman, born and raised. I am from the most beautiful island. Island with the best beaches ever. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. I am from the U.S. Virgin Islands, so I like to say we are a colony of the United States. We are definitely a territory of the United States, no different than Guam. You might have Puerto Rico. That's really what who we are. But it's very interesting because there's like this duality involved. Like we are Caribbean people, but we're also US citizens. So the immigration process that other islands may have to, independent islands may have to go through, we don't have to go through that. You know, you just fly in and fly out of the United States. So we don't deal with the immigration process. And I'm just going through this so that people could kind of understand, because we're like a little dot on the map. And so people tend to not know. We are, so to help some folks, we are the neighbors of Puerto Rico. Literally, we're right next door to Puerto Rico. And so, yes, I was born and raised there. I came to the States when I was about to turn 18, pretty much. So I was raised in the islands. What can I say? My background? I became a Rastafarian in like when I was like 13. Okay, so like about 9th grade. And so I was introduced to Pan-Africanism very, very early, introduced to Marcus Mosiah Garvey very early in my life, right? And I was always surrounded by those teachings and those, you know, concepts and those philosophies, always been surrounded by it. I mean, you could tell my name is Muslim. And so at one point, my mother was Muslim. My father is still a practicing Muslim. With long, long locks dragging on the floor. Okay. So I'm just giving you a picture of kind of like where I come from. So I grew up kind of like with that Black consciousness around me. I I want to say I really got into it and delve into it. Like, I'm talking about linking with other people that were 9th graders and sometimes younger, and just kind of like swapping books. Best times of my life, just so you know, swapping books and exchanging ideas and thought processes and so forth. So I was around that really early in my life, very, very early. And so before I was even like a full teenager. And so I came to the States around 17, 18. And then now here I am. I lived in New York for a time, and then I'm now living in Maryland. I've been here for quite some time, though, in Maryland. I was a practicing Christian all of my 20s. And I like to say all the time, I do not regret it. It was necessary. It was a necessary stopover on my journey for sure. It also protected me in my 20s from a lot of things that I see people get into in their 20s. And so I am much grateful for that. So I was a Christian, and I wasn't just a Christian church going, showing up on Sundays. I was a very studious Christian. I was delving. I've always been a seeker in my life. So when I became a Christian, that didn't change. And so I practiced Christianity, and then I began to kind of like exit out of there because there were just too many question marks for me. And people were really getting offended that I was asking certain questions, particularly some of the elders. And so I was starting to get labeled as a rebel and whatever else you want to call me. And so I just like, nicely exited out of Christianity. Since then, and when I say exit, I was more in a legalistic Pentecostal skirt wearing, no jewelry, no makeup church. That's the environment I was in my 20s. And then I exited out of that, and I went into a non-denominational, predominantly white church, actually. And then I kind of exited out of that, and I've sort of been in, I don't want to say limbo. I'm sort of just kind of out here and open. I understand that God is in all, right, and exists within all. I understand that she is in nature. So I understand that I am never disconnected from source unless I choose to be. And that's the philosophy that I embrace, honestly. I know that spirituality, as far as like any practice of spirituality you could think of, Islam, you can find source in all of them. Never in its fullness, right? But you can still find it in all of them. And so that's just kind of really my journey. That's sort of like where I'm at right now. And yeah, that's it. Sorry.
Okay. That was good. And so your background with spirituality, that's similar to mine. I grew up in Christianity most of my life. I was 30 when I started really, kind of taking a step back, and then and like I said, I studied comedic science, spirituality, and then also Vodun. I studied that a lot, and things like that. So I don't say that I'm a part of one specific religion per se. I focus on my art because my art is in all spiritual systems. Sometimes it just has a different name. And so, but I do focus on that, just trying to create balance. And but yeah, that's very, very similar. And I know that when Colette comes, she has a different, kind of spiritual background as well, from probably from us. But I do want to give some shout outs here. Thank you everyone who was in the chat, who came here. Sherelle, as always. Let's see, Inya's sister, peace to you. Let's see, Just Do It, my moderator. Thank you. You're doing a great job. Victor Freeze Music. Thank you for coming. Arshan, you brother. Thank you for coming. As always, one community. Thank you. You are always supporting me. Thank you so much. And let's see who else. Verse, thank you for coming. Let's see who else we have here. Loverboy Linsky, thank you for coming. Tiffany Simmons, thank you. Natalie, hi Natalie. Peace to you, sis. Okay, thank you all for coming and hitting that like button. So we're going to get into the conversation here. So now The question that I do have is if you consider yourself to be a part of kind of that one race. So, do you consider, since we all come from different cultural backgrounds, do you consider yourself one race, as in one Black race, or do you think that we are all different, all different backgrounds? And do you see yourself building with people that look like you or people who are maybe closer into your cultural background?
Ooh, that's a tough one. um, for me, I can only say yes. Am I drawn to other melanated people or people that probably, firstly, historically, probably Africans I've probably dealt with more, and Caribbeans as well. Just being in the UK,
Mm-hmm.
they're the Blacks that I tend to have met or built relationships from a very young age. Where growing up, my best friend was from Jamaica, had another from Trinidad, and actually most of them were from the Caribbean islands. And then later on, I started to meet more and more from Africa and everywhere else. And I think culturally, I'm drawn to them. I think we have a lot of shared ideals or maybe shared backgrounds. So that didn't stop me though from building relationships with other races. Growing up, I had white friends, I had Asian friends, I had a bit of everybody. But I would say my closest circle, the people that I felt were I could identify with more, were closer with, were definitely, other melanated people. Can I say that we're all the same race? Scientifically, probably yes, but are we all very much different depending on where we might have been born, where we've been brought up, and what kind of ideals? Maybe our religious backgrounds are very different. So it really depends. I've never met another Black person that I thought was exactly like me, who thought exactly like me, who had the same dreams or ideals. But I think for the most part, as a race, I'll say as a human race, I think we all want, pretty much the same kind of things. We want to be safe, secure, have family, friends, love, prosperity, all those kind of things that are general to all of us. I don't know if there's anything that I think specifically Black people desire that's maybe different. I'm not sure, but probably someone else can answer that a lot better than me. But I don't know. Yeah, that's a tough one for me. I'm not sure now.
Okay.
But I'll just say my life experience has just shown me, maybe it's my experience in the UK, but it seems like we generally do have, the same outlooks in a lot of ways. But yeah, go on, Hanifa, sorry.
No, that's good. I'm gonna need you to repeat the question. I'm sorry. I got some of it. I just want to make sure I'm answering it correctly.
Okay. Yeah. So do you see yourself as part of as far as people that look like us, you melanated people, do you see us as one race? And with that, if you do or don't, do you desire to build with others that look like us?
Oh.
So that was basically the question. Yeah.
Whew. Okay, so the first one, do I see myself as part of the Black race? Pretty much?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. Absolutely. I don't know what I can add to that. That's just a simple yes for me.
Okay.
The other question though, I would say in an ideal world, right? I would say, I'm open to build with everyone, right? But because we're not in an ideal world, and somebody's set on keeping people that look like me in a certain place, then my first priority becomes people that look like me. That's it. Because the reality is there is an entity that is has been, let me just put it that way. And this is not a victim thing. This is a reality. This is people's actual experience. And so I'm not here to minimize people's individual experiences as melanated people, not just in this country, particularly in this country, but also globally. So I'm not going to minimize that and say that oh, it's a victim thing. It's not. It's these are people, this is people's reality, right? In an ideal world, I would say sure, I'm open to building with everyone, but we're not in an ideal world, and I am very, 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 very aware of that. And so this is why I choose to talk to my children the way I do. This is why I choose to educate them the way I do, because I understand that we're not in an ideal world, and it would be delusional for me to allow them to enter into the world, right, not equipped, right, to deal with a world that has no love for people that look like them, right? So yes, ideally, I would say I'll be with anyone, but we're not, because we're not in an ideal. No, I'm for my people first, just like everybody else,
right?
For their people first.
Can I ask you a question? Because I hear the word building, building. Like, what does that look like? What are those? Because I hear people use that term a lot, but then I'm like, well, when you say building within your community, what does that look like in
so that is something that I did want to get to.
Okay.
But I guess to kind of touch on it a little bit, it requires that's a question there. And I think those are questions that I have a lot with others. But it's about, for me, building has to happen on a small scale first before we can do it on a bigger scale. So it's coming together with people who are like-minded. And just like Hanifa said, it's not going to be with everyone. It's going to be with like-minded people who have the same goals as you, and working on ourselves spiritually, mentally, economically. And then when we are at a decent shape, then we can build on a larger scale. But as us in the Black community or Black race, however you want to look at it, we know that we're kind of not at a level to even compete on a global scale. So that's one reason for this conversation, because if we're going to actually build, we would need to build with others and other countries and other, another continent, because other people have kind of something to fall back on. They have like another country to kind of fall back on. So, when Chinese people come over here, they have China, even if they don't necessarily, even if they say that they're here to grow or to build, they still have another, in essence, they have that for themselves, but we don't. Well, I'm going to say, as me being an African American, we're and even, I don't call myself an African American, but in the context of what I have to put on paperwork, to call myself an African American, it's kind of like, am I really African? Like, I can't just go to Africa and just start going over there and building anything. But then also, as American, we don't have access to economic wealth or power. We don't have access to that. So we would have to start within our small communities first, and then kind of grow it on a larger scale. So that's kind of what I mean with building with like-minded people who have the same goal in mind. I would like for Hanifa to kind of touch on what she thinks about that.
It's, well, as you was responding to Kat, I thought about the most basic level. Like, when we talk about building, as you were speaking, I'm like, yeah, even at the basic level. So if I'm going to say I am going to focus, just like everyone else, I'm going to focus on people that look like me collectively, right? So I have to start with my own individual life. That means, and I know I'm probably going to step on some toes when I say this is basic for me. That means that when I decide to pick a mate, that mate is going to look like me, because my children needs to look like us, right? Because all of this is a part of building. Reproducing is a part of building. Having children is a part of building, right? And so when I decide to choose, like when you guys were just talking about building, my mind automatically went to the basic level, which is relationship. And this is why, for me as a Black woman, it's like, no, I will not choose another race of men over Black men. I will not, because for me, that means now that I am also helping build another community, while mine, or the people that look like me, is struggling. That's a no-brainer for me. It just is. So when we talk about building, I'm not even talking on the macro. What my aunt mentioned is the micro, which is the family unit, which is the nuclear family. So we could start there. So building for me there is choosing someone, not just that's the same skin color, right? But also the same mindset, that also wants to build towards the same vision, right? That someone who aligns with where it is that you're trying to go, and you're able to align with where they're trying to go as well. So it has to be a mutual thing. It's not any old Black man, because let's be honest, all skin folk ain't all skin folk ain't kinfolk, right? And so I don't want to connect with someone who, I don't know, we're just not on the same wavelength. So building for me starts from the basic level, which is the nuclear family, right? And for me, that's working with a Black man.
Yeah, so that you definitely touched on something there. And I agree with that. I really don't even have anything to really add to that. You said it all, but I think that we do have to start there. We have to start with self and who we are choosing and how we are choosing them, and teaching those things to our children as well, or to whomever we're close to, and teaching those values, because it's very important that that they have that same mindset as we do, because sometimes you get into situations where they're not even thinking, the person that you're choosing to be with, they're not necessarily thinking that way. They're not thinking about building. So we have to really be mindful of who we are connecting with and building with, because just like Hanifa said, you're helping someone else, you're helping another group of people, and that is true. And just like she said, we might step on some toes here, but it shows that when someone goes and they are with especially if that mother, a lot of times you choose whatever your mother is, so you're around that mother's friends, whoever the mother is, that's kind of your circle, and who your circle of influence usually is. And then whatever she buys, like most of the time when I'm the one who goes grocery shopping, right? So a lot of times when I shop, I try to support Black businesses. But if that person is a whole another race or another culture, they're not necessarily trying to support Black businesses, so it's very we have to be very strategic about what we're doing in our community. So let's did you have anything to add to that, Kat, or
just slightly, just of what Hanifa said, looking at it on the micro level, because you can't build anything that you're going to be able to sustain and grow if the foundation isn't strong, and that foundation always has to start with the family, building strong relationships, setting those ideals in your children, and showing them the way to do it, so they can, when they're older, go into the economics, see how they can build businesses, support their, fellow Mennonite people in their community, and do it in a way that's, that's not going to crumble, something that generationally they can build on, and grow. So yeah, that's what I really wanted to say on that. But yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I want to, because that was, it detoured a little bit, but that's okay. I kind of want to talk about, as far as our different cultural backgrounds, how you experience that cultural difference. So with Hanifa, you being from the Caribbeans, and then Kat, you being from Sudan, but living in UK. Do you ever feel that you have to prove yourself to either side? Like, do you ever feel like they you have to prove yourself to, like, you're in the United States, we do have that thing where it's just like, oh well, you're not really a part of us. And then you go back home, do they ever like, well, you've been over there, you've been
Oh,
westernized?
Yeah,
I'm,
I love
I'm
that
sure
word.
Kat could probably speak more to this.
Yeah, I hear that word a lot. And when I go back, I don't really hear it. Probably not that much. I think when we were probably younger, but I think now they probably just look at me as like, a tourist, someone that comes every like 3, 4 years and hangs out with the family and, enjoys the food, the culture, then goes back. They're like,
Goes back.
yeah. But in the UK, I used to live in London where there was quite a large Sudanese population there, both Sudan and South Sudanese people. And people from the Horn of Africa, Ethiopians, Somalis, Eritreans, etc., etc. So it was a nice melting pot. But I think for me personally, I've not really dealt with my Sudanese community as much, probably in the last 10 years, just because I think mostly because most Sudanese adhere to Islam and it's just not my thing. They're very,
Mhm.
yeah, they're very strict with it. Like Hanifa was saying, both my parents are actually both still practicing and Muslims. I come from a family, 5 children, none of us practice in that way. And I think that probably had a lot to do with probably being in the UK, where it's a very secular society. People don't really push religion. I think a lot of people assume that I'm a Muslim just because of the country that I'm from.
Mhm.
But I'm not. But yeah, fitting in here, I don't know. I've heard I've heard some funny things over the years that, either I'm not black enough or, you're African, but you don't really look African, or, things along those lines. You're African, but you're not really, really African, are you? Like things like that. Very ignorant, silly comments. But
Mhm.
that was probably more when I was, probably a teenager or my early 20s, where for some reason, Sudan, I think at that point, it was the largest country in Africa, but no one ever seemed to know where I was talking about. And they would say, Sudan, where? Saudi Arabia? Like, what are you talking about? I'd be like, no, Sudan is like, it's the largest country in Africa. You don't know where it is. Like, I had this like attitude, like, you're all stupid. But no one really knew about it. It really was funny that I really had to explain to them. It was like this country that was pretty quiet. And I think a lot of people maybe when they saw me, they probably presumed I was from somewhere else, and I don't know, they didn't really ask. But when I would tell them, they were like, where? It's okay. I think over the last, few years, I think a lot of people have become a lot more familiar with Sudan anyway. So yeah, but I've not really found it that difficult. I don't think I've ever struggled with my identity. I'm very proud to be an African, born in Africa, the history of my country and my people. So, I'm always excited to talk about it with people if they're not really sure. And yeah, I just have conversations with them. So I never take it as offense anymore that they don't maybe know much about it. But once they hear, oh, it's Nubia or it's this, and it kind of starts clicking, and they might say, okay, I've heard of that. And yeah, and then we start going from there. So yeah, that's why I enjoy doing actually. So that's what a lot of my channel is probably going to be about, kind of letting people know about the culture and history and things like that. So yeah, we had a comment. Hi.
Hello, it's good to see you.
I'm sorry, guys. Hi, ladies.
Hi.
Hey, Hanifa.
Yes.
Hi, girl. Hi, Maya. Thank you so much for working with me. As you guys know, at least I know most of us here are mommies, right? So I thank you guys for bearing with me. Kat, nice meeting you for the first time. And I don't want to disrupt the conversation, but I was listening so I could join in whenever you feel like it.
Yeah, so since you're here, just tell them a little bit about your channel and your cultural background for me.
Okay, so real quick. So about my channel, I talk about having a business mindset in order to leave a legacy. And one of the ways I apply my business mindset is through my 11 plus years of marriage. And one of the ways I believe in building a legacy, it's not the only way, is having strong family structure. So I talk about the positive side of marriage because there are so many, debunks out there about marriage. So I try to just, fill people in the gaps of, hey, this is what, the benefits of marriage and this is how you could approach it. But marriage is not for everyone. So I don't push that on everyone. And a little bit about myself is I am Jamaican. I brought my flag so you guys can see. So I am Jamaican, born there. I stayed there until I was about probably 3, maybe 4. And then my grandmother actually came to America and applied for all of us. But myself, I was one of the last to come. So I did not even come with my mother. And it's funny, I thought it was a bad dream growing up, but it was actual reality. I remembered the day my mom left and I was holding on to her, and I didn't know it was actually real. I just thought I was having dreams as I was growing up. But my mom, I came to America, and then I came last. And as I grew, my mom will send me back to Jamaica so I could visit my dad so we could have a relationship and so forth. So I pretty much was reintroduced to the lifestyle and everything, like literally authentically, by going there, because I'm Jamaican, being raised by Jamaicans in America. It's not the same, as you guys know. So I was able to experience and see the actual differences of, wow, I live in a first world country and the country I come from is a third world country. So there are so many differences, but so many similarities, right? So with that, it helped formed my mind in understanding that how much my culture mean to me and what it meant to me, and how it's important for me to embrace it, and why it's important for me to be very strategic in who I married. My husband is Jamaican. So that was very important for me to make sure, for me personally, that is something that I wanted to continue to push forward with my kids. I know one of the questions that you asked Maya was, do we see ourselves as part of the Black culture? Mm-hmm. And do we see ourselves building together within the Black culture or separately? That's a 2-part question. It's a great question. I personally feel I am part of the Black culture 100%. And I always say, when I go outside of my doors, they're not looking at me and saying, hey, you're from Jamaica. You're from, wherever, you're Black, right? So I am part of the Black culture no matter where I go. And like I said, when I go back home, there's differences, but there's so many similarities. Now, do I feel that I'm part of the building of the Black culture separately? I would say no. I would say no, because if I say that I want us to build separately, I'm already putting us on a losing playing field. That's how I see. I'm already putting us on a losing playing field. So why not if take for instance, if my daughter grows up and she says she wants to marry another race that is not a Jamaican, that's a win for me. Like, the Black culture is pushing on. And even on my channel, I thought I wanted to talk to all women. Thank you. I wanted to I thought I was talking to all women when it comes to about marriages, but the more and more I started to see who was tuning into my show and writing me things, it was more Black women, younger Black women. So, and then looking at society in who's coming last, it's people that look like us, right? So to be fair and to be truthful, I have to say I have to talk to people who look like me first. First. I'm not leaving out any other race. But who is hurting more in what I talk about, like I said, building a legacy, having strong family structure, it's us. So I would say I want to build us first, and whoever wants to come along and help, great, that's fine. I'm all for it. But then again, if my daughter decides that she wants to marry another race that's other than the Black culture, that's fine. So all right, I hope I brought you up to speed.
Okay, thank you for that. So what we were also talking about when you came in, and Kat gave her experience, but Hanifa and Colette, I would like you to talk about if those differences with being from two different, being from a different culture, being born in a different culture, and then being here in the United States, do you get kind of having to prove yourself to either side?
So I'm just going to answer it this way. Because we are a dot on the map, right? People do not know about the Virgin Islands. I think more people are becoming aware of it, but for the longest while, people did not know about the U.S. Virgin Islands. Okay, that's just a fact. And so one of the things that they would say to people who are from where I'm from, like, the threat to call immigration on us is laughable, because they do not understand that we are U.S. citizens. They don't. A lot of people do not know that. So that's why I definitely make sure I have to say that. No, when I am born a U.S. citizen. My mom can put me on the plane and send me to the United States. Like, we're free to go back and forth. So that's one. So of course there's the questions of how do you guys get around? Do you guys travel by boat? Like, it's just like really wild questions when I first came, right? Now, I want to say this as someone who subscribes more to Pan-Africanist philosophy for the time I was 12 years old, maybe. I am aware that a lot of Black Americans have not traveled, have not even acquired a passport, right? And so it is not like a deliberate attempt to insult someone. It's genuinely a lack of information, which some of us are just going to call ignorant. So me using ignorant here is not that it has this negative connotation, like I'm trying to, hit you. It's really ignorance, meaning the lack of knowledge. And that's okay. So I've learned to have patience. I don't necessarily feel out of place. The time that I do feel out of place, however, I've been in a lot of situations where I have to code switch tremendously. And I just want to say something about code switching that people do not get. It hurts. It is painful to do so sometimes, depending on the words you have to use and how you say it, because our language, you're talking about rhythm. And to speak a certain way requires me to change that rhythm. It requires me to shift my tongue in certain ways that I am not comfortable with. So that's why oftentimes when you see people from the Caribbean or anywhere else that have an accent somewhere hidden in there, when we get upset, everything goes out the window. Code switching where we just go for it, right? And then you're like, oh, you have an accent, right? Because anger somehow just tells you, like, turns off that code switch, right? So what I've dealt with though is when people hear my accent, they automatically other me. I didn't know this was a thing. It's now as I'm older adult, I pay more attention to it. What do I mean by that? I have been in conversations around African American struggle within America. When I enter the room or I enter the conversation, there's always going to be 1, 2, tops 3, okay? People who think that I cannot contribute to the conversation because it's different. Yes. I have experienced that, right? And as someone who subscribes to Pan-Africanism, who is a big fan of Marcus Mosiah Garvey, okay? I actually used to take insult. Now they also have this new movement happening, FBA, Foundation of Black Americans, and ADAS, okay? African Descendants of Slaves. That new movement even created more of that rhetoric around, well, you can't speak in this conversation. And I just want to be clear on this. I agree to a certain extent. You, me, everyone on this panel is considered Black, but all of our Black experience is different. It is different. The issue comes in where we think that difference has to separate us. The issue comes in when we think that difference somehow means that someone is better than the other. That's where I sort of tread cautiously, because that doesn't have to be that way. And to be honest, and I'm just going to be frank because that's just how I am, okay? That idea of othering, therefore I could persecute and dominate you if I can other you, is a very Eurocentric way of thinking. And I'm being honest. Think of colonialism, think of imperialism, right? What has to happen first? We have to first convince our people and everyone else that these people are subhuman, that these people being other are different. Because once I can put you in that category, then I could justify mistreatment. And we as Black people have internalized that. So then you get in a room with the diversity and it becomes this thing of Caribbean people think they're better than African Americans. African Americans think that African of the continental Africans think that they're better. I would be dishonest to say that people from the Caribbean don't think that way. I would be dishonest to say that. That is not true. The fact is there are some Caribbean people that come into the United States, and this is where we come in. And you have to check that every time you hear it. Different does not mean inferior. African Americans have a different Black experience than me. And I'm going to land by saying this. The quicker I accepted that, the easier it made building with my African American sisters easier. You get what I'm saying? The quicker I was able to accept that, because here's the reality I had to accept. When you grow up in school and you don't have a white teacher until you reach college, that's a different experience. When you grow up and all your leadership, your elected officials, your politicians, anyone that's in big leadership position looks like you, that matters. It matters. And I never used to think about this. It matters. And to try to minimize that, and then I have to remind people who are not American born in the United States, that are Black, right, and come from countries that are predominantly Black, you already have a head start. You already have a head start on your Black pride, if I must, for lack of a better term. You have a head start because African Americans have had to remain in the place that also enslaved and continue to oppress them, right? And that's not a small task. So for me, yes, I've been in spaces where people try to other me, but knowing Hanifa Nayela George for who she is, I do not allow it to happen. When I hear people who are outside of America speak about African American men, women, when men say to me, "Oh, well, you're different," right, and try to speak down an African American woman, I check it. It's not a compliment to me. I check that immediately. If you are in your family and someone says something, you have to be able to check that. And that's kind of where I come from. Yes, I am othered sometimes, right? Whether directly or indirectly, whether I could tell people are thinking it, I could feel people's energy. I know I'm othered because I have an accent, right? And people automatically think that, and people automatically think that if you from the continent or you have not struggled as a Black person. And for me, I say to those people, if you think that the illusion of white supremacy is national, then you are crazy. The illusion of white supremacy is global. Everyone, everywhere you go, at the bottom of the totem pole, you have the darker people. Everywhere you go in this world. So to think that your experience somehow, we're going to do the struggle Olympics, okay? That your ancestors struggle more than mine, and yet mine were enslaved too. We were just enslaved on an island. It's crazy to me. And I feel like we have to really not be afraid to engage in those conversations and unpack it so that we could break down those barriers and we could actually start embracing each other despite our differences.
Thank you, Hanifa. So I just want to touch on what Cece is saying here in the chat. So she said, all true, but I'm of Jamaican descent, and Jamaica was colonized by the British Empire. There are still issues with identity there. Jamaicans can be colors. So, Colette, can you touch on that?
Yeah, I'm so glad Cece wrote that, because as Hanifa was talking to saying that the back home there, the politicians all, everyone looks like us, right? Which is true. And to be truthful, when I come into this conversation, I was raised here. Like I said, I came here when I was 3 or 4, so practically raised here. So my experience of seeing a Black politician or a police officer that looks like me, or, so and so for the teachers, it's the same experience as a Black American that I got visually. However, to add on to that, I was able to travel back home during the summertime so I could see the differences. Now, when Hanifa says you're seeing people that looks like you back home, you don't really think about it. It's true. It's very true. However, our people back home, since we're colonized, and it's like we still have not, and when I say we, I'm talking about Jamaican, right? Not the Black American. It's like we still have not honest on the power that we have. Like the way Hanifa says that we have Black politicians. We do not see the power in that back home. Our mindset is still as if we are underneath the British colony, which they say we did get our independence. However, it's still colonized behind the scenes. A lot of things is still run by the Queen, literally. So with that said, we still mentally, and even if you see in some of the laws and some of the things that's going on back home, we still have not honed on the power that we have, that the fact that you do have Black teachers, that the fact that you do have Black doctors, people that look just like you, we still have not honed on that power. So when I come to America and I see America and I'm like, whoa, like if we had the mindset of what Black culture has here in Jamaica, it would be like the revolution of when Haiti got their freedom. What I mean by that is the mindset that we have here in a Black America. There's so much access that Black American has here. There's so much opportunities that when I look back at my country, we don't have. But what we do have is a lot of people that looks like us. So it's kind of like if we combine the two, oh my gosh, what we could do, right? And when I think about that, we both have our struggles. So when Hanifa says we come into a conversation and once they figure out, for the most part, no one knows that I'm Jamaican. For the most part, only older adults would say, hey, I hear accent, right? They're like, hey, I hear accent. So I could have a conversation, but to be fair to the conversation, I always say I'm Jamaican because I know off the bat they're going to try to, like Hanifa says, kind of put you in that other, right? But I have to be honest and understand that I was not raised in a Black American household. So inside the closed doors of my house is a Jamaican household. So our culture, it does have somewhat differences. So I need to embrace that and understand, yes, there is a bit difference, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. So when I do enter in the conversation, I do say, yes, I am Jamaican. It's out front. There it is. However, we're not that much different. And what the fucks kind of said something to it in the comments. He's like, we need to stop focusing on our differences and learn how to build with it. In so much sense, he said it like that. Sorry, what the funk, if I'm paraphrasing. But yeah, you do get in certain conversations where you're trying to add to the conversation, and they're like, in a sense, they don't really say like, back up. This is not the conversation for you. You belong over there, and it's like, no, because last time I checked, when you go outside, they look at you the same way they look at me. So what are you talking about? Right? Like, what are you talking about? If you are really trying to build in the conversation and build a better generation, let's say even forget about yourself, but build a better generation for your kids, then let's have solutions and stop trying to focus on what we're different about, because others don't look at us different. The ones that don't look like us don't look at us no different. So we're just fighting with each other for no reason. And at that point, I'm like, you know what? You got it. So that's all I have to say to that.
So, and Cheryl, she does make a good point here. The difference is you can say, I'm not Black, I'm Jamaican, or I'm not Black, I'm Haitian. So I think that is something we struggle here with in America, because we feel like we don't have a real connection to
Wait,
but,
my
Go ahead.
Okay, so usually in these conversations, I always say, can we please make a differentiation between race, nationality, and ethnicity?
I got the slide right here.
Go ahead, Ma'at.
Go ahead. You keep talking. I'm going to put the slide up.
Oh, you got a slide about it?
Yes.
Okay, because when I just read that comment, I'm just like, and maybe it's because I'm born a U.S. citizen. I don't know. That's why I tend to say saying I'm a Caribbean woman is very general. So I don't say I'm Haitian, I'm Jamaican, or I just say I'm from the Virgin Islands. Maybe, and even over the top as a Jamaican, even though she's considered a Caribbean woman, her experience is still different from mine, because I was born in a U.S. territory. Okay, so even that experience is different. But when you say that, like for example, I was on Facebook once. No, I think it was in our chat, and conversation with Kings. Someone said Caribbean people don't think they're black. I had to clutch my invisible pearls. Like, what are you talking about? What? We know we're black. Like, we are very sure about our Africanness. And then they had to come in and say, well, I'm talking about people who are from the Dominican Republic. And behind my computer, I'm like, then say that. Because when you say Caribbean people, I think about, I start from Jamaica, come all the way over to Cuba, over to Hispaniola, and the Hispaniola is the DR and Haiti divided by some water, a little bit of water. And then you come all the way down the Virgin Islands, you come to the British Virgin Islands, you're talking Trinidad and Tobago, St. Vincent, St. Kitts, Dominica, not Dominican Republic, Dominica, right? You talk about Barbados. You could go down the whole Caribbean chain. And most Caribbean people I know is very aware of their Africanness. So I wasn't sure what they were saying, but they had some experience with some people.
Hanifa, no, I'll push back on that.
Yeah, that's fine.
I push back on that.
Colette. Go ahead.
Just a little bit. No, and maybe it's more so the Jamaican culture, because let's face it, what culture, when you talk about the Caribbean, right? What culture do you know of is really most known for their music, their food, the revolutionary people that comes out of there, the places for you to go to vacation? Most people gravitate when you say Caribbean, automatically they're like, okay, Jamaica, right? That comes to their head. So with that being said, a lot of Jamaicans prop themselves up on that. So they feel that, not all, they do feel they are separate from the Black culture, or not even the Black culture. I'm sorry,
Black
African
American.
No, not just Black American. Yes, they feel they are top of the top. Not you have to really educate them when it comes to, that you're African, right? Wow. And when you say that, yes. And when you say that, it's kind of like they feel insulted. They take on I'm not saying all, but the ones that I have, especially the younger generation, right? And we have to put that into the equation too. But they do take on the persona as if we are up here. We are up here, and every other nationalities comes below us, even African people. I've seen it.
Wow.
Yes.
Go ahead. No, yes. Honestly, I'm just going to say this, and I'll let my ad go ahead. Honestly, the Jamaicans that I know, the Trinidadians that I know, the people that I've been around, there is no question about Blackness, about race. Okay. I think the issue comes in oftentimes where people are talking about that, because I've even heard African Americans say, well, you're not really Black. Right? As if African Americans have the monopoly, like they own Blackness, right? And I'm like, well, you guys, it's true. I'm just like, so when some Black Americans talk about Blackness, what they're really talking is Black Americanness, not Blackness in general. You get what I'm trying to say? So I think people kind of like get those mixed up. And oftentimes I think it's a matter of educating. Like, there are Black people in Brazil, right, who speak Portuguese. They are Black people on Spanish-speaking islands who speak Spanish, who look like you and I. They are, you have to understand just how far your Blackness expands, like how far it goes, right? And I really think that most people who subscribe, like my aunt, subscribes to Pan-Africanism, we understand that, but not everyone does, right? And so in their minds, it's sort of like, where you look like me, but you're not Black, because what they're really saying is Black Americanness. Now, I will agree, there are people that come from the Caribbean and they will tell you, I'm Black, but I am different from a Black American. That's what I've seen, Colette, especially even with Jamaicans. They are very eager to make that distinction between themselves and Black Americans. And they will be right, because they have a different cultural experience, right? And they are of a different nationality. but a totally different race, now we're talking about something else, and I can't get with that one.
Okay, so with that, that was a great transition here. So I do want us to differentiate between race, ethnicity, nationality, and culture. So race, that refers to the identification of people into groups based on various sets of physical characteristics. So you're talking about someone who is Caucasian, Mongolian. We have the Negroid, which is, the African. And so that is the actual race. So when we talk about belonging to one race, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the Negroid race. And then when we say ethnicity, that refers to the people who identify themselves based on common ancestral, cultural, national, and social experiences. So, like we could say English, the native or indigenous people, Maasai, Igbo, that is an ethnicity. And then we talk about nationality, that refers to the country of citizenship. So if you were born in that particular place, like Jamaica, or being American, German, Greek, that's an actual nationality. And then your culture, which is usually based on your beliefs, values, your practices, your rituals, and that is usually shared generation to generation. So that is, you have the Caribbean culture, West African culture, Asian culture, Russian culture. Those are actual cultures. So we differentiate those things because, just like Hanifa and Colette were just talking about, we consider ourselves that, like for me, I consider myself to be a part of a particular race, but my ethnicity can be different from that. And then my nationality, obviously I was born in America, so my nationality is American. And then my culture is going to be more of the African American culture, as opposed to Hanifa, which she would be the Caribbean culture, as opposed to Kat, Sudanese culture, but also I'm sorry, she would be in the African, what culture would that be? Would that be
East African.
East African culture, right?
Yeah.
That'd be East African culture, but then she also lives in the UK, so she might also have that English culture a part of her culture as well. I'm not really sure.
But you're not, and you also what you're not saying as well is that where you come from, there's a culture.
Right.
You are not like a New Yorker.
Right.
That's true. That's
even though both of you guys are African Americans, you guys are not the same. You guys still even have your own cultures within the Black experience. I just wanted to throw that in there because oftentimes African Americans don't put that in perspective. You have Southern culture, you have Northern culture, right? That's the thing. So even when you were breaking that down, you like, I have the Black American culture. And then it's like, well, what is that? Because if you go in the South, it looks different than if you go to, let's say, New York or something for a Black American. Yeah.
That's very true. Because me being from the South, we have a lot of traditions in the South that I've noticed with people in the North that they don't do. So it's a very different, you're right about that. It's a very different culture. And so I want to go back because Hanifa did touch on the whole concept of that being different. So that division. So here they talk a lot about the foundational Black Americans. They talk about then we talk the ADO as the descendants of slaves, all of that here, which I think that brings so much division, but also talking about how other cultures who might belong to our race, but those cultures, and Colette talked about that as well, how they come here and a lot of times they may look down on Black people in America, or even vice versa. So there are things that we learned about when we were young about people in other cultures, or even Africa, right? Like they said things like, oh, they live in huts, right? Crazy things. So social identity theory. And so that is social psychology, the study of the interplay between personal and social identities. Social identity theory aims to specify and predict the circumstances under which individuals think of themselves as individuals or as a group members. The theory also considers the consequences of personal and social identities for individual perceptions and group behavior. And so, in group versus out group. One of the most prominent preference based explanations of the in group favoritism in social psychology is rooted in the work from the social identity approach and says that people simply have a stronger desire, a social preference to help in group members relative to out group members. And then out group, a group that is distinct from one's own, and so usually an object of hostility or dislike in comparison to the in group. So a lot of times you even see that here in the United States. So people don't want to say that they're from Africa. They don't want to be a part of that group. They want to say, well, I'm indigenous, I'm Native American, when in all actuality, we were everywhere, right? We were everywhere. We're indigenous to this planet. So then also you have other cultures who come here and they learn about Black Americans and they say, well, I don't want to be, I'm not like them. What's wrong with them? They have all of this access to all these things. Why are they still behaving like that? Why are they still at the bottom? And so that's here, we're talking about that social identity theory, because we a lot of times don't want to come together because we don't want to identify. We don't want to be like that Black person. I'm not like that Black person. I'm not like them. I don't behave like that. I don't speak like that. And so that is something that that we have to identify as being an issue in our community, and why we cannot unify as much, because we want to only be a part of a certain group because of those specific experiences that we don't think we identify as. And so, Kat, I do want to get you in on this, because since your experience, even your experience being in the UK, do what is the racial culture there, as opposed to I guess my question would be, how is it viewed? Is it talked about? Because I did hear, I was listening to someone the other day and she was talking about how a lot of times it's not even spoken about, that everything is kind of from the American, like when it's talked about in like racially, it's talked about from an American perspective, as opposed to like the UK or British, they didn't do anything. So it's only talked about in that perspective. Can you touch on that for us?
And it's interesting because seeing as Britain caused probably most of the mayhem that is causing these issues in other parts of the world, specifically in America, where there still seems to be a lot of.
Kat, can you turn up your mic volume?
Turn it up.
Yeah.
Oh, am I low?
Your sound is low.
Is that better, or is it still low? I had this problem the other day. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Can you hear me any better? No? Let me...
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, you can hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. In the UK, really, we don't tend to talk about race as much. At least from my perspective, I don't see race as being as contentious as maybe it is in the US. I think for the most part, we get along for the most part, which you probably wouldn't expect. So when we do hear about issues that arise in the US, sometimes it is surprising because, and saddening as well, because there seems to be a lot of problems that stem from the racial divide. You know, for my own personal experience, I think the only thing that I've had problems with maybe dealing with other Africans or Black Americans or other Blacks in the diaspora, being an East African or a Northeast African. There's always been this idea that somehow we're separate from the rest of Africa, or, you know, if I came to the US, I think just by looking at me, they might be able to pinpoint maybe where, you know, the region in Africa that I'm from, you know, just based on looks. So they might already have a preconceived notion of like who I am, how I identify, maybe my religion, etc., etc. So I have that kind of unique perspective. So I don't know. Do you know what? Of course, there's racism here in the UK, and there's definitely issues that stem around that, but it tends to be more dealing with the relationships, I think more so with the Asian population here in the UK versus African or Caribbeans. Perhaps back, you know, with the Windrush generation and the early influx of a lot of African immigrants, you know, it's probably a bit sketchy there for a while. But for the most part, I think, yeah, everyone seems to just get on with it. We don't really hear a lot of issues or mistreatment of Blacks or Asians and things like this. So, and when it does focus on the Asian community, it's usually more about based around the religion, you know, the Islamophobia or the, you know, things like that, which are often blamed on the Asians or that kind of thing, or the way that I think Asians tend to segregate themselves a bit more than Africans or Caribbeans here. You know, they assimilate more, if that's, you know, the right term to use. So yeah, for the most part, I don't see, as a Black person here, I never feel or have never felt that I've never ever been held back, or there's things that I haven't been able to achieve here. And I'm not even a first generation, you know, Brit. I was born here. I'm a British citizen, but, you know, I've had afforded the same opportunities as everyone, you know, and been able to achieve what I wanted to here. So I've never felt that way. And that's why sometimes it's hard to get involved with conversation like that, especially when it deals with African Americans who do feel that their race has held them back from achieving what they want. So I'm always open to listening to that, and yeah, hear what they have to say. But I think in the UK, it's different. It is very different, and not fortunate, but, you know, I just feel like I haven't had to deal with those same kind of the level of discrimination that perhaps a lot of African Americans have to, you know.
Kat, I wanted to ask you a question. Maya, is that okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
So Kat, would you say first of all, when you were speaking about the Asian culture, you just taught me something new. I didn't even know about that, as far as them more so being, you said, discriminated against, more so, you know, because they're, I guess, stick to their culture more, you know, they're more tight-knit and such. But I wanted to ask, as far as like when you said that you don't necessarily see identify with the struggles that some Black Americans might say, because, you know, certain things that they might say that's holding them back. Do you feel that with you saying that, it's just more so of your personal experience and not necessarily like as a whole for the Black culture, the Black community in where you're at? Or is it more personally you feel that way?
You know, from what I see in the UK, African immigrants here and Caribbeans are very high achieving here. You know, they do very well when they come here. They outshine actually a lot of, you know, white born people here, because they come here with a different ideals, a different you know, what they want to take out of this country. So when they come, they're not here to mess about, basically. They're here, school is very important, higher education, things like that. And I'm sure it's the same in the US as well. But I think, you know, when immigrants come here, and I think immigrants in general, wherever they go, they tend to have that mindset. So I think, you know, even African immigrants who come to the US, I hear this rhetoric a lot about how people from Africa or the Caribbean, they come to the US and they achieve things very quickly, and people assume that they're getting an unfair advantage over, you know, American-born Blacks. I don't think that's true. I've never seen any evidence that, you know, Africans that come to the US are somehow, you know, all these loans and money is thrown at them to, you know, start businesses that isn't equally available to American-born Black people. You know, maybe it's just they've saved, they've sacrificed.
So I would, since you brought that up, yeah. So what we do a lot of times see is that, and I have my theory on why that happens, but a lot of times from other cultures, African cultures, a lot of times they come over here and are very successful. I personally don't really know anyone from Africa or even from this is personal, so you know it could be, but have come here in the United States and have not been successful. So what do you think is, why do you think that is, that they can come from another country, from another part of the world, and come to the United States or come to the UK and be very successful, as opposed to the people that already live here?
Honestly, I think it's probably maybe a complacency, I might be able to call it, because oftentimes when people, you know, immigrate to another country, there's a certain drive that comes behind that perhaps, you know, someone who's indigenous might not have that, because they are being relied on to succeed. They probably, family, friends have sacrificed a lot in able to get them, you know, over to these countries. They probably have a lot of weight on their shoulder to be successful, to, you know, send financial help back home. So it's not just probably the individual that's driven, but, you know, his family back home, children maybe they've left behind. So maybe it's a different mindset that really drives them to take up the 2-3 jobs, you know, live in a home with 10 other people, you know, in probably poor conditions, but they always have that drive that eventually they're going to be, you know, they're going to succeed in a country that's not their own. So maybe, I don't know, maybe that's...
So and so, ladies, what do you think about that, from y'all being from different cultures? And I kind of see us, to me, I see y'all being successful in a sense, but why do you think that is? Why do other cultures come to America who look like us and are usually more successful?
Hanifa, I want to hear Hanifa first, because since you guys are under U.S. territory, that'll be interesting to hear. Go ahead, Hanifa.
Well, my take on this, and I know Maat, you said you had your own theory. Here's the thing. I feel like, first of all, the biggest tool of propaganda is media. Okay? So the same way that Black Americans often think that, let's say Africans, I'm going to use Africans as an example, and of course, I'm not going to name any specific country in Africa. Let's just say generally the continent of Africa, right? they might say, oh, these people live in huts, so whatever, right? That is media, because that's the Africa that the media choose to to portray. It doesn't mean that there's no poverty there, of course, but there's poverty here, there's poverty in Jamaica, there's poverty wherever you go in this world, okay? So that being said, I was listening and I'm just like, well, where are we getting this idea that Black Americans are not hardworking? Where or not high achieve? Like, what is that? Like, I get that, Black immigrants come into a country. Why? Because it's a simple thing. The countries that they're coming from do not have the systems in place to assist them that America provides. So they come in knowing that, right? And I'm talking about Black Americans who live here. They come into this country knowing that, oh, there's what is it? There's some places that don't even have a thing of mortgage, for example, where you borrow from the bank to build your house. No, you're gonna build your house with your money. That's what you're doing. Okay. There's no systems in place as far as foster care. I can go on and on. So yes, immigrants come here and they're very aware of the advantage, right, that America provides. It is like me. It's like all four of us. You, Maat, Colette, and Kat. You guys live in a house together, right? In that house, you guys feel extremely oppressed. You guys have been living there all your life, okay? And it's abusive and whatever else is going on in the house. I am coming from, let's say, and this is, again, this is just an example. I am coming from an environment where maybe I used to miss meals, right? Or I didn't have a bed to sleep on. So now I enter into you guys' homes, right? And I'm excited, like, oh my God, like you guys just have food everywhere. Like you guys, you have like a whole comforter set and all of this. So I'm excited. What do you think you guys are looking at me saying? You guys are like, really? Because in your mind, you're like, I'm trying to get up out of here. But me coming into that environment, I'm excited, right? Because of the extreme difference between where I'm coming from and that home. But for you who have lived in that home, you're like, this is an abusive environment. I'm trying to get up out of here. You're not thinking about your mind is now focused on surviving that home versus taking advantage of that home or looking at the advantages you have in that home. Me coming into that home, I automatically can see the advantages because I have not yet experienced the abuse of that home. So the abuse is not the priority in my consciousness, right? The access to certain things that I didn't have before becomes the focus. The abuse is the focus for you three who have been existing in that home for so long, and you just try to figure out how to get the hell out of it. You understand what I'm saying? So when I say, for example, media, when I say media is the biggest tool as far as propaganda, the same way Black Americans are being fed certain images of certain countries in Africa, is the same way people over there that have television is being fed certain images of Black Americans here in America. It is propaganda. Black Americans are no less hardworking than Caribbean or African people. That is bullcrap. They are no less, it's not that they're not high achievers. They are, I know most of my friends around me are Black American women who are entrepreneurs, who are doing the darn thing. You get what I'm saying? So I'm very careful how I talk about this. I'm very careful because I have been around enough immigrants that are disrespectful as hell. And they come into these people home, Black Americans home, and they disrespect them. And they do not celebrate and appreciate that the path that African Americans, with the help of the diaspora, by the way, okay, because when you talk about Marcus Garvey, you talk about Carl Michael, you talk about even Malcolm X being a first generation American, right? When you talk about these people come from Caribbean homes as well. But they were Americans, they were Black Americans, right? So when you talk about the path that's already been laid for those of us who are now coming in, we late to the game. We are late to the game. The path has already been made, and we come here and we don't even have the decency to wipe our feet. We don't even have the decency to wipe our feet. We don't have the decency to watch our manners. We don't have the decency to say thank you. That's an insult. And so it goes both ways. It's not just Black Americans having an issue with people who are immigrants, Black immigrants. It's also Black immigrants coming in and also being brainwashed, not brainwashed, but more so like programmed from propaganda. And they might see one or two, what we say, Pookie and Ray Rays or whatever, you know, or a couple of them. And then they make these blanket statements. And so when you see me talk passionately, I've been in many conversations like this. I am very, very, very careful how I discuss this because we try to participate in that propaganda and we do it without realizing it, of Black Americans being at the bottom of the totem pole. And I call BS to that, and it's an insult. And any Black immigrant that comes to this country and even takes that position, whether it's verbally or the way you act towards them, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. And that's how I feel about that, Colette, to be honest. That's just my honest opinion.
Me? Oh, Lord. Hanifa. Lord, why'd you put me on a panel with her? How am I supposed to, like, next time, just you and Hanifa, because I cannot stand up to that. Like,
you good, Colette. You good.
But okay, where do I start? Hanifa, you know, when you said that you have to be very careful in coming to those conversations, I feel you because there's been times where it was like, I did have that mindset, what you said, of Caribbean people or other people from the diaspora coming into America feeling as if Black Americans is not working hard enough. You know, I did have that mindset because of knowing the two worlds, right? Like I told you, when I was younger, I used to go back to Jamaica and stay there for the whole summer. So I was integrated in really knowing what life looked like, right? Firsthand. All the way up until now, we still go back home with our kids. We take our kids back home. So I had that mindset thinking like, okay, why is it that America, like you said, have all these things set up? Like, if you need food stamps, if you cannot take care of your kid, you have foster care. Do you know what we have back home? It's called, you throw the kid away. If you don't have any food to eat, it's called you go hungry. That's what it's called. They don't have all these things set up. So to say all that to say, I used to think like, you guys have all these things at your fingertips. Why aren't you guys ahead? But I had to take a step back and say, no, they have accomplished a lot. They have paved the way for a lot of generations to come. They have worked hard. They have they have so much to contribute all together to the Black community all over, right? So for us to try to tear them apart and saying that, well, you guys don't have as much as we do, and you guys didn't use the things that you have in place for you guys so you guys could get ahead. We cannot equate that to my little island, right? Because as a whole, to America and the Black community all over the world, I mean, they have their different issues all over. But when you think about it as a whole, we have, and Black Americans have accomplished a lot for the Black community. So with that said, when I do go back home and I look and I say, even though we don't have certain things in place, we are still also behind in a lot of things that we do have access to. We are so still behind. So why is it that, okay, when you come here to this country, you're able to work as hard and you're able to get ahead, but why didn't you take that same enthusiasm when you were at home? That's a rhetorical question. That's a rabbit hole, actually.
Thank you, Colette. Thank you.
I don't want you guys to answer it. That'll be another stream. But that is something to consider as well when I was going down the thinking like, okay, I cannot think of Black America like this. Like, they have their own struggles, but also they have paved the way for a lot of us, a lot of the entire Black community all over. So that's what we have to look at, and to say that stop looking at our differences and look at what we have similar, so we could continue to build on that. We could continue to build on that, because this conversation is important, but at the same time, it's like, are we still picking at each little thing? Are we still picking? You know what I'm saying? That's how I feel sometimes. It's like, okay, yes, I'm Jamaican. Yes, you're from Africa. Yes, you're American. You what now? Can we come up with a solution now? That's how I feel sometimes. I just feel so frustrated. Like, yeah. But Hanifa, I feel you, Hanifa.
No, Colette, and if I could just jump and say this on my ad, when you were just speaking, the other thing that I wanted to say is that we are so afraid of differences that we're willing to minimize people's experiences. Here's what I always say. People, y'all have ever heard this? Oh, we were on the same ships. We just got dropped off in different places.
Yes.
Have y'all ever heard that?
Yeah.
To me, that's no different than saying, when people say we're all, the human race. In other words, like, we're all the same. We bleed the same blood. Can I just say that?
Mm-hmm.
Or people say, I don't see color, right? I see when Black people say we were just dropped off, I'm like, see, y'all gonna stop that, okay? Because you aren't comfortable with being uncomfortable sometimes, that you think that you have to focus more on what makes us the same, because identifying and accepting differences is just difficult for you to do, right? Because in your mind, you think that if we're different, we can't coexist. And that's not true, right? All of us, let's start in the individual level. All of us have contradictions within ourselves. You know that. Where you might say you feel strongly about this thing, and somebody will be like, well, what about this? And you'll be like, well, that's different. And they're like, no, it's not. It's not different, because we all have those contradictions within ourselves individually. And what does that mean? That means that there are two different things, right, that are coexisting within us, right? And we're trying to reconcile them sometimes. And some of us have mastered reconciling them within ourselves, right? It's no different than a community, right? I always see a community as the body. Ma'at, might be the toe, Kat might be the nose, Colette might be the lip, whatever that is. You know what I'm saying? Right, whatever that is. But all of you guys are important within your own functions. All of you are necessary within your own function. If I lose the toe, even though I'm still going to be alive, it's still going to impact the entire body to some extent. You lose the eye, you are still going to be alive, but it's still going to impact the entire body to a certain extent. Now, there are certain organs you lose, you're just gone, right? Those are usually the parts of our bodies that are not in the forefront, that are unseen, the heart and so forth, right? Those things that are behind the scenes. But the analogy with the body is like, come on, we don't have to be the same thing to exist. This idea of unity, and to speak to solutions, Colette, the idea of unity, we have to really differentiate between unity and uniformity. Ma'at and I do not have to dress, think, eat, act the same to be able to come together and work towards a common goal. That's a misconception. We do not have to do that. That is a lie. But what happens to us is we automatically think, because you believe different, because you speak different, because you look different, because you're from a different place, then I cannot align with you. And that's not true. We don't. And to say that is to not even understand nature, because it happens in nature all the time, where two things that look completely opposite have to work together. We know what polarity is. We understand that, right? We know the push and pull of nature to make sure that the balance remains. It's no different than us coming together, right? So I just wanted to put that in, this idea of, oh, well, I don't know why y'all think y'all so different. we come in the same boat, different places. No, our experiences are different. I just pointed out my aunt from Louisiana. Your experience to that of my friend who is from Brooklyn, New York is not the same. And you don't have to minimize that to accept her for who she is,
right,
or to accept you for who you are.
right,
Yeah.
exactly. Because you know what, with where, take for instance, with Maya, she's from Louisiana, and I learned when Sherelle was talking about where she's from, the deep the richness of the culture there, you know, that I'm listening to Sherelle speak about it, and I'm like, man, this is so fascinating. Like, I didn't even know so much, right? And it didn't make me feel different. It made me feel proud, like, oh my gosh, this is another part of my would I call that culture, or would I call that ethnicity? Whichever one. But I didn't feel different. I felt, oh my gosh, this is something else I want to learn more about. I want to teach my kids about, because I could bring my differences, and I could talk about my culture, and I would love to hear more about Louisiana, Mayette's culture. What is it that they do there and stuff like that, you know? So it becomes something where we could put together, and we learn from it, right? And we're more proud of it, instead of looking at it like, oh, they're different, they do that different there, you know, like, we don't do that, we don't do that back home, right? So yeah, the mindset should be, in a perfect world, should be, I'm proud of what your culture is about. I want to hear more. I want to hear more. Do you want to hear about mine's? You know? So that's why that's how when you said that, Hafina, that's what brought me to there, where I'm like, that's another solution, you know? Feeling more proud of hearing other cultures, of the other Black American cultures, and adapting to it and saying, this is part of mine too, you know, even though I am from a different another island. So yeah.
And go ahead. Hanifa.
Sorry. Kat, can you hear me? Okay, you're on mute too. Okay, so in your culture, because you're East African, right? Sudan, right? Is this northern, southern Sudan?
Sudan, and then we have South Sudan.
So I mean, North or South Sudan. So Sudan and then South Sudan. Okay. So in your culture, I'm gonna just point out something, because my aunt, I know you have an answer to this, and I know Colette does, and I don't know Kat, so I'm asking. Is there something in your culture, and maybe East might be different, because when we talk about the Ma'afa, a lot of our ancestors came from West. So I'm just testing this out to see. In your culture, is there something you guys do when the year turns over? Is there particular food you cook?
Yeah.
Okay, so what dishes would you? Is there like a green, like you have to have greens or anything like that?
No, I don't think there's any specific, like,
okay.
It's not I don't know, a New Year meal or Thanksgiving where you have traditional dishes. I think it's general, but I think we just celebrate it as the turning of the year. But I don't think there's anything specifically different that we do. In terms of food, here in the UK we do the whole, the fireworks, but food-wise here in the UK there's not anything there.
The reason why I asked that is because something that I found out. So I am in a relationship with a born African American Virginian through and through man. Okay.
You're a traitor.
Yeah. I mean, proud. Okay. I mean, can trace his ancestry back further than I even can. Okay. But what I learned, and the reason why I asked, is that if you talk to a lot of, and that's why I say it might be like a West African thing. When you talk to a lot of people from particularly West Africa, the Caribbean, and then you talk to African Americans, because a lot of Africans don't realize how much of their culture is actually African. They don't realize it. Caribbean people, the same thing, right? And you find the low connections. For example, when there's a new year or something, right? There has to be some greens involved, right? Because it's some sort of luck or something of that sort, right? Blessings to your home, whatever that is. If you talk to each other, you're going to find those similarities, right? Okay, so it might be black eyed peas for some people here in America, but even with the black eyed peas, they're like, well, you got to make sure you have some greens. Where I'm from, guess what the New Year dish is? It's something we call kalaloo. It's not the same kalaloo, Colette. It's not the same kalaloo, Colette. It's actually, no, it's a soup. It's a soup, but it's really spinach. It's just greens, right? And then we get like a side dish, like somebody might say, we say spongy. They call it fufu, right? But it's cornmeal. Yeah, it's cornmeal, and you put it in it, but it's still a green. It's still a green that you have to have. And when I started paying attention to mostly like West African and even African Americans, mainly from the South, especially, and even up north, because remember, a lot of people from the North, their family migrated from the South. I find that commonality there when New Year's come in, where there's a certain dish and it usually consists of some sort of a green that has to be there so that you could bring in good luck to your home. I just wanted to point that out. And it might be a West African thing, Kat.
Yeah, I never heard of that before, so that's really interesting. That's so cool.
And Colette, you made a good point, because Sherelle, she's from Louisiana, but we're in different parts of Louisiana. So she's from New Orleans, the southern part. I'm from the northern part of Louisiana. So even our cultures are a lot different. Yeah, it's a lot different. You can even tell because she speaks differently. Like she has an accent. Yes. Like, she has a deep. And as soon as I heard her the first time, we were like, oh yeah, she's probably from New Orleans. So we we hear that accent, and they have a totally different culture. It's rich, and we never look at each other as, oh, you're better or you're different or you're worse or anything like that. So
that's what I was gonna ask. Like, because it's funny you say that, because I do have a friend who's from New Orleans, and she did say that I didn't know there was a north and a south, but she did say that like the Geechee and the I can't remember the different ones, but she did say that they do look at each other different. So when you say that, is there any type of go ahead, bring it out now.
Yeah, there is,
come on now.
It depends on who you are, right? So
I got her, Hanifa. I got her.
So a lot of times there's some differences there, and sometimes people in New Orleans, it's almost like they almost feel, because anytime you tell somebody you're from Louisiana, they think you're from New Orleans. It's kind of like anytime you tell somebody you're from New York. My husband's from New York, but he's from Rochester, New York, and they have a different culture. So anytime somebody hears he's from New York, they automatically assume he's from New York City.
Right.
And so it's the same thing. It's almost like they're their own little island. They're the special island,
okay.
And so it is a different there sometimes that's that whole, and even there's another city down there, Baton Rouge, which is the capital of Louisiana, and it's that same thing. It's like, in essence, a little bit, it's kind of like that better. And so for us in northern Louisiana to kind of feel better about ourselves, we'll say things like, oh, well, that's where all the crime happens. That's the hood, where the hood is and all that. So you do kind of have that battle with Louisiana, like you're from North Louisiana. So, that's where, you feel like that's the
uppity up.
Yeah, right. And then Southern Louisiana, if you're from the South side, then
tell me how does that play out in the actual in the entire state, right? As far as like, is it really, even though you guys have your differences, right? Does the state actually do come together? The Black community do come together, or are they really separated?
So it kind of depends. when it comes to the Black community in Louisiana, it's more of a cliquish kind of thing. Like if you belong to a certain group, like so belong to a sorority, so that is kind of who you connect with. Or if you are religious in your church, you're connected. Because even in Louisiana, it's a very South, it's very religious. So people automatically assume, they don't ask you if you are, they ask you what church you go to. So that is kind of the thing. So we moved out of Louisiana because it's a different atmosphere being here in Atlanta than it is in Louisiana. You walk into the store in Louisiana and you smile at somebody else that's Black, you usually not gonna get a smile back. But here, when we came to Atlanta, the Black folks, they were friendlier. And so that was one of those things. And yeah, just like the in groups versus out groups, it's that sense of belonging. So you have to kind of find your belonging where you belong in Louisiana, as opposed to maybe you can come here. Like even I feel like even in this conversation, like we have our differences, but we can get along, we can talk. It's not really like that in Louisiana. Like if you have to belong in that group.
So is it classism too? Is it more so classism?
Yeah, there's some classism. There's definitely some classism. Like there is kind of the bougie versus the kind of the not bougie. You know, it's not so much of a it's almost like you either have it or you don't. It's not a lot of middle ground in Louisiana as opposed to like some other cities. It may be bigger cities, it might be a lot more bigger, but I was also in a smaller city as well. So as opposed to New Orleans, which is considered a big city. So yeah, so that's the differences. Now I do want to touch, because I mean we have a few more minutes here. I want to touch on the unity part and solutions part, because Colette, you did bring that up. So I'll see if we have a time for a few more questions here. So I want to know, because Hanifa touched on the concept of unity as far as being with someone that looks like you, and Colette, you talked about that too, wanting to be with another Jamaican. So when it comes to that, I think a lot of times Black women in America have this concept, or Black men tell Black women in America that we are less, or we're the whole manosphere thing, kind of we're more masculine, as opposed to women who who come from different cultures. So do you think, is that a true statement as far as women from other cultures being more feminine and knowing how to keep a man?
I would like Kat to answer, because
Oh Lord.
Come on, Kat.
Ladies, this is the subject that I've had to address a lot, because I do go on to some of these manosphere panels and we have this discussion a lot. And yes, I've heard that from many men who, in their attempts to find a reason why they've maybe failed in the relationship, they'll put the onus always on the woman and try and explain to me why these women are uncooperative, they're very combative and masculine, and they've driven the Black American man out of the home, etc., etc. So I've heard that. And I've also heard about, I can't remember the acronym for it, but the group of men who've decided to completely remove themselves from dating American Black women and now are looking overseas, whether into the Caribbean or South America or Africa. And I've heard the reason why is because they find that these women hold more traditional values. they're more, I guess, appreciative of having a man, especially as a American Black men. They feel that they can offer them something, and in return, they're going to have very submissive women at their beck and call, and who are going to treat them, as the kings that they want to be treated as. So I have heard that a lot. Do I see that? It's funny to me because I talk to a lot of Black women, Black American women, who, for the most part, are some of the most amazing, educated, and patient women that I've met. So for me, I don't find truth in this idea that American Black women are somehow less than, or that they're going to find better options elsewhere. And it also rubs me up the wrong way when I hear them even talk about abandoning the Black American woman, because I always tell them that, okay, if there's, to me, the women are a reflection of the men. So if you see that there's issues that are happening within the culture where women are perhaps being disrespectful to the Black man, have lost faith, don't really care about being in relationships or marriages anymore, what is going wrong, and where can you start addressing those issues? Because I always hear them throwing mud at each other, but it's never anything about how to solve it. It's never solution based. It's always just complaining and calling each other names and stuff like this. And for me, it's like, okay, well, if things are going wrong, fix it. What can you do to fix it? Because like we were talking about, it's about building and having commonalities amongst each other. Now, if you can't build with even your counterpart, where do you go from there? Like, if there's this big group of men who are just looking elsewhere, I don't think that's the right thing to be doing. You need to be staying at home, fixing the issues that are arising between the Black American man, the Black women, fixing that first, because I don't think there's really been that much concerted effort. It's just almost like they've given up for no apparent reason. Because to me, when I look at the American Black women, they're the most loyal. They've gone through so much with the American Black man. And things have really, I think, only gone awry probably in the last, 20 years, if that. So it's not like it's a complete, lost cause. There's still ways, whether it's cultural influences or breakdown of marriage or communication, whatever it is, it can still be fixed. It can still be addressed. And I think throwing in the towel and looking at other countries for women is not the right way to go, because these women, actually, if you're looking at going to the continent or the Caribbean or South America, wherever, there's still issues there that these women, it might not be the same, but they have a lot of issues that they'll bring over to you, and you have to look at, the negatives that might come with dealing with a woman that might be from a third world country. Is she taking advantage of you? Is she being nice to you for a short period of time, and then as soon as she gets what she needs out of you, she's out the door and, decked it? So it's not a good idea. I would say, keep pushing. There are a lot of, issues that we see around. It seems like there's has been a breakdown of communication with a lot, not saying all, because there's still a lot of Black Americans who have very healthy and productive relationships. So I would love to hear more of those kind of people, kind of like what you were saying about talking about marriage and how to, make it successful and dealing with the good and the bad, but hanging in there, because, throwing in the towel is not always the right way to go about it. So yeah, that's my little 2 cents. There you go.
Okay, so Hanifa or Colette?
I'm sorry, Maya. I wanted to just ask Kat something real quick. Like, because Kat, you what's the word? Looks wise, right? Looks wise. When someone sees you, what comes to their mind where you're from off the bat?
Off the bat, they usually think I'm Ethiopian or Somali, something like that. Off the bat, yeah, that's what I get.
Okay.
Is that what you get? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So when you're in certain conversations with men, mostly men, right? Do you kind of feel like they put you on a certain pedestal because of your looks, you know, your hair, your skin, and stuff like that, and kind of in a sense of, I'm trying to get the word, in a better sense of, okay,
Yeah.
finish what I'm trying to say. Finish.
Yeah. No. I get away with a lot of stuff given my aesthetic, you know, because even as an African, you know, we hear this all the time, you know, women from maybe where I come from are considered, you know, we get complimented all the time. We're the most beautiful, we're this and that. We've all heard that. Okay. So being in a space with African American men, yeah, my looks does, yeah, pretty privileged. Yeah, it gets me away with a lot. I can that's really actually the reason why I even got into the manosphere, because when I heard Black American women addressing certain subjects, they would get shouted down, called B's and
Wow.
H's, and really disrespected. But I would come on and I would pretty much say exactly the same thing, but because of how I looked or the accent or whatever it was, I was able to get my point across without having that same level of disrespect. You know what I mean? So I saw that right off the bat. And
thank you for saying that, because there are women out there who know that, or maybe even naive to that, but I will first say know it and not admit to that is one of their powers, and that is given to them by the Black men, and kind of brush it off as if no, that's not true or whatever, you know. So thank you for admitting that and understanding that, yes, that is a privilege in a way, you know. I appreciate that.
No worries. Yeah, I'm very honest about it. Yeah, and just in general, even if it's not dealing with the manosphere, it's yeah, you know, men, they're visual creatures in general. So of course, when you know, they'll just make certain comments, or they're more likely to kind of listen, even if they don't agree with what you're saying. They're a lot more kinder to your opinion than maybe, you know, a woman that they don't think is, you know, physically attractive. And that's something I've seen, definitely. So I take advantage of it. I take full advantage, and I go around calling them names and having arguments and knowing they're not really going to say anything about it.
And they're like, no, we don't like her, get her out of here. No, but Hanifa and Mayat, I just wanted to see, what did you think about that? Like her saying pretty much kind of like what we all seen, you know. But my husband keeps calling, but please answer that.
I mean, this is this is not a secret. We spoke about this on Conversations with King, right? It is only a secret to those who choose to deny it, right? Because if we understand what the top of the beauty standard is, the beauty standard hierarchy, when we understand who is at the top, we understand that proximity to that is what determines whether someone is seen as beautiful or not, right? So you get into texturism, you get into featureism, right? You get into all, because it for example, like you just said, Kat, you're East African, okay? These are people of denial, right? So what happens is you might have a West African person who has maybe bigger lips, broader nose, right? East Africans tend to, most of them, a lot of them, let me don't say most, tend to have the more slender, you know, nose, lips, whatever that is, right? So what happens with that is there might be two beautiful people, and if you're honest, you know automatically, and Maat has a series going on, Are Your Thoughts Your Own? Right? This is all connected even to that, why we perceive beauty the way we perceive beauty, and then how we determine who deserves what type of treatment based on the way they look. And we know that look is that beauty that we call it is determined by Eurocentric standards of beauty, right? So this person is a little closer to what we see as beautiful, which is at the end of the day, I mean, I just need us to call it what it is. It is whiteness. That's it. And so when we have this, and I appreciate Kat being honest to say, no, I'm aware of it, right? What bothers me is when people know and they see it, and instead of women acknowledging it, they end up allowing it to divide them, and they end up being pit against each other. Oh, you know, Colette, you are of a darker complexion than me, right? So if you say something like that, you might have people come and say, you know, or you mentioned colorism, for example, right? You might have people come and say, oh, darker skinned women just say that because they're jealous, or, you know, they just have bad attitudes and all of us. And for me, that's really just a way to not really deal with the real issue of colorism, because if you deal with the issue of colorism, you have to deal with the issue of racism. And if you deal with the issue of racism, you then have to deal with the issue of having to dismantle, right, the all white guy that sits at the pinnacle of your head, of your mind, telling you what to do, how to think, what's good and what's determined bad. You're gonna have to deal with your own level of consciousness and your own perception of these things that we're talking about. For example, we're talking about beauty. You get what I'm saying? So it's easier to kind of like, you know, dance around colorism and just kind of minimize it to, oh, Colette is just being jealous. That's all it is, because Kat is getting all the attention. Or like Kat said, she could enter into a space and men talk to women that look a certain way, you know, with a different tone than they talk to Kat. You get what I'm saying? Now, do we know these things are real? Thank you, Kat, for saying yes, because we know it's real. It happens. We know that there's a hierarchy that exists. And like I said in Conversation with Kings, it's just a matter of determining how are you going to navigate that? How are you going to navigate it? How do you want, are you okay with allowing people that might have the complexion of Colette be marginalized for the sake of you being propped up? You have to decide in yourself if you're comfortable with that. That's a personal thing, right? But it can't become a personal thing if I don't acknowledge it and realize that it is a real thing. Texturism is a thing. Even amongst African American, texturism is a thing. Yeah. Okay, they'll be like, well, you can't be you can't be fully black. What are you? You know, look at your hair texture. And then we get into what? Featureism. That's a real thing. And that's why I said on the other panel, if you put all black, beautiful black people from all parts of the world in one room, even amongst them, someone is going to come in and create a hierarchy. Well, the people with the more curly hair, they go on top here. The people with the more slender noses, and they're all black. But even within that, there's a hierarchy as well. So yes, that's my thoughts on it, Colette. It's real. Texturism, colorism, featureism, ageism, ableism. I mean, we could go down all the isms. They exist. And the reason why we take and we lump them into something like pretty privilege is because we get to curtail around what the real issues is, because at the end of at the root of those issues is what? Whiteness. And we don't want to face whiteness because we don't have the collective power, the economic power, and even feel empowered within ourselves to stand up and say, no, you're wrong about that. Whiteness has done this. We don't have the courage to do that. So we want to just dance around it.
Right. Sorry, Maya. Did I jack rail your whole conversation?
No, it's okay. Because that is, I mean, that's an important part of understanding that like Hanifa said, that propaganda, and understanding how far back it goes with the pseudoscience, with the skulls, with the Caucasian skulls. Because I was just the whole concept of there are Egyptians, they based Egyptians off of being Caucasians based on the size of their skulls,
Right.
or the shape. I'm sorry, the shape of their skulls.
Yes.
And that's why even people who are still very much melanated are considered Caucasians. And so that whole idea of the pseudoscience, where they took just people based on certain looks and said they are, and then gave them certain attributes that had no scientific backing. It was just certain attributes, and you have to understand why they did those things. And when I say they, we're talking about white men mainly, and why they did that. Because if you have a planet that's full of melanated people and you want to feel superior, and you want to see yourself as superior, and you want others to see you as superior, why you have to put yourself there. And on a live that Kat did, and where there was that whole manosphere group there, and I was telling them that they had to kill the white man that's inside of them, and they took offense to that. And I was telling them that it's a subconscious thing, not necessarily. You're not walking around saying, I'm a white
Girl,
man.
maybe you said it a little too harsh. Maybe you said it. I mean, because if I heard that, you need to kill the white lady in you. What? What? There's white in me?
Well, you know she did, right? She probably did.
And you see how she's saying it, like she said it calm. You have to kill. And it's like, what?
And you know how people read text messages, right? So if she probably typed it and they were like, say what?
Oh, even worse. Even worse. But no, I'm just messing with you, girl. But yeah.
So,
next time just let Kat type it for you with her avatar.
But yeah, it's that whole, like, when I say that, I'm saying that because we have been conditioned, because we have been programmed by the images, by the textbooks, by whatever we believe in, all of these things are in our mind. So yes, we are thinking through whiteness. So when we look at other cultures, and our men look at other cultures as being more exotic, more beautiful, all of these things, that's what you're thinking through. Even when you say, oh, well, they know how to take care of their men more, and not even understanding the issues, because you're not there, you're not in that culture, you're not in that country to really know, then you're going through their lens and not looking at it on an individual level. And I talk about this all the time. You're basing things off of your own experiences, and so it's something that is and I appreciate Kat's honesty with that, because there's a lot of women who say, what you want me to do about me having privilege? That whole concept of, well, it's not my fault I look this way, but what can we do with that? Because in everyone has certain types of privilege to an extent, but how do we get that where we have more of a sisterhood with one another? And I'm not looking at you differently, or looking at you because you have that privilege, but I'm saying, how do we work together? How do we work together? How do you use it for our benefit, right? Like Kat says, I know I got it, so I know that I can have these conversations with these men, and they're not going to treat me a certain way. And how do we use that on a bigger scale for our benefit?
Right.
So we're gonna start kind of, I hate to end this conversation, it's so good.
I'm good.
So let's talk about even protection in a sense, because like I talk about protection a lot as well, as far as do y'all, from your experiences with men in your specific cultures, do they treat, and how black men in America treat black women, is it different or is it the same?
Okay, so here's what I'm gonna say to that. Okay, so the idea of what people call patriarchy, it's not just limited to America, right? We are aware of that. So women across the globe sometimes are often treated like second-class citizens. That's just a fact. Okay, you can go to most countries, you're going to see that. So I think there is what they call intersectionalities involved here. So like that's why people say black women who are black, they kind of have that double thing going on, right? But if I could just start with women in general, I would say globally, woman is not as protected as we would want to be, just in general, just because you are a woman, if you understand what I'm saying, right? And then when you bring it down to, again, even within womanhood, and y'all don't get me started on this whole femininity movement going on, because even within that, there's a hierarchy. But okay, because let me tell you, if you don't know this about me, when I start having conversations, I'm about dismantling some stuff, okay? Because I know that the systems that we talk about don't just exist outside of us. We carry them. We perpetuate them, right? That's us. We uphold them. And so when I talk about dismantling, it's not just one me taking on this whole big beast. It is me saying it's here is where it starts. You have to start to dismantle that. So now, as far as women being protected globally, no. Then you add blackness to that womanhood. You have something else. You get what I'm saying? I tell people all the time, I am very much in spaces with black men who I feel protected by. I'm a brown black man that if I walk out of a space and it's late at night, they are going to ask me where my car is so that they can walk me to it. Okay? I live with a black man, a beautiful black man, that I don't worry about protection. I just don't. The men that I tend to be around, I don't have those issues. In fact, my energy demands respect. And this is not a boast. This is just me and my experience. I don't get disrespected by men. I just do not, right? And it is also because my energy enters the space before I do. Okay, so I'm aware, because I'm like Kat is saying, she's aware of I'm aware of certain things, right? I'm aware of the privilege of having Black consciousness instilled in me at a very early age. That's a privilege. It's a privilege for me to be self-aware and know who I am. That is a privilege. Yes, that is a privilege. Okay, so yes, but I'm like you. I live in this bubble, and for the longest while, I would hear people talking about not being protected across social media, Black women in general. And until I really had to take a little closer look, and I understand what they're saying. You know what I mean? Because I might be surrounded by men like that. That doesn't mean everyone else is. And it's important that I acknowledge that, right? That I know that they are women, that they can't walk down the street without being harassed. That men actually think they have free access to them without consent, that they could just call them boo and babe, and then sometimes bitches, right? I am aware of that. So but I think when Black women are talking about protection, it's not just physical. It's a really multi-layered, nuanced conversation. Yes. Black women are simply saying, like, for example, my Acho, my sister, Kat is my sister, Colette is my sister, right? Automatically, I don't need to meet them in life. What I would never do is get on a platform and go back and forth with them and call them out their name. In fact, I might even correct Colette, but my correction, I'm even careful with how I do that, right? To where I might see her behind the scene and say, girl, you know, you was just dumb for saying that. What is wrong with you? But in public, I might be like, Colette, chill. Colette, chill. That's like chill. You know what I'm saying? It's like you with your sibling and you know they're wrong, right? And the most you're gonna do is like, sis, just chill. You talking to your sibling. What you're not about to do is get in your sibling's face, pointing your finger, you know what I'm saying, and yoking them up in front of the what they perceive as an enemy. That's not what we do.
Right.
So that's protection in a sense where I can disagree with you, but I will never disrespect you in public or in private. It will never happen. Right? But that comes from within. That starts from within, because I would never disrespect myself in public. And so therefore, I look at my aunt, I look at Colette, I look at Kat as my equal, as my sisters. I would never disrespect them. Do you get what I'm saying? So are we protected? How I feel about that? No, I think that our men can do a better job of protecting us, right? But I also think we could do a better job of uplifting them. And I'm going to say this last thing. Something that came to me the other day around protection is what Black women need to understand. And I guess I'm going to step on some toes again, and that's okay. Y'all going to be all right. It'll heal up. Listen, Black women need to understand that when you say we do not need men or we do not need Black men, what you are also saying is that we do not need protection. Because you cannot say that the masculine protects. You cannot say that it is the job of a man to protect, right? You can't say that and then say, but we don't need men, and then also say, but we need protection. Where is the protection coming from? From the same people that you are pushing out? So that's that. Even with the protection conversation, I'm even funny. You cannot say we don't need our men, but we need protection. From who? If you are saying it is the job of a man to protect. So we got to be very careful what we're putting out into the universe, because the universe will respond to it. You don't need men? All right, then lose your protection. That's all I gonna say to that.
That's exactly correct. I mean, how do Kat, how do you feel about that, as far as when Black women say that they don't need men?
Oh, I think it's wholly untrue. But I have heard women say this about Black men, about Black American men, not protecting them. And I've also heard Black men saying things along the lines as if these Black women don't deserve or are not deserving of their protection. So I've heard it on both sides. You know, it's difficult because I see the disrespect that happens between African American Black men, pretty much on the daily on YouTube. So I can't see how people that are warring each other are going to expect protection and even respect from one another when they can't even have, you know, sensible conversations without it, you know, dissolving into complete, you know, madness. So until whatever's going on, because even me being in this space for like going on a year now, I still haven't been able to pinpoint what it is that is telling women or Black American women that they don't need their men, that their men don't love them, and vice versa. And where it all just went so terribly wrong, because ultimately Black men and Black women want to be together. They want to have healthy, functioning relationships. They want to be secure in that. And with that comes the protection that both of you can provide each other. It's not just going to be one way. So I don't know what the answer is. I hit my head every day trying to have these conversations. I hear a lot of ignorance that comes from some men in particular when they talk about certain attitudes that they think certain women hold, and that they will just, leave them out in the cold if they're in need or in trouble, or they're being harassed or anything like that, because they think it's not worth risking it for their women. And they're the only men that I really hear saying things like this. So it's sad to hear. So yeah, I've heard it on both ends. I feel like Black women don't feel that they can rely on their men or feel secure in maybe their future with them. And Black men feel disrespected by the Black woman, and he doesn't want to put himself out there in a position where he gives himself wholly for her to just turn around and, throw it back in his face and give him the disrespect. So, yeah.
Colette.
So I'll say there's a lot that Hanifa and Kat unpacked. So I'll just add on to what they were saying. First of all, in being protected, right? Hanifa, she pointed out, which I wanted to say, is that there's layers to it. Being protected is not just physical, right? And I was trying to write down some examples. Example is when a woman is speaking, when a Black woman is speaking about a certain issue, and Kat brought it up, when a Black woman is speaking about a certain issue, and she could say the exact same issue, and then someone else that looks like a cat comes in, or a different race that looks, different from us comes in and say it. It's like, oh, what did you say? Okay, I hear you. Wow, I didn't know that's what was going on. And you're over there like, I said the same thing. That's another form of protection, right? When let's see, when a woman comes to the table, when a Black woman comes to the table with a certain idea of wanting to build something, or something, it could be revolutionary, we're not heard. As a Black woman, we're not heard. That's another form of protection. But if someone else comes in that looks different, and this is layers to it, guys, please don't take my words and try to box it in. This is layers to it. We could go layers to it as saying that this is a woman issue, a race issue. Right now, we're just talking about Black women. That's what Maya asked, and that's what I'm keeping it on. So it could, and the other example I said, the dressing, the way we might dress, right? If it's a provocative way, it's looked down on, and we're called all these names. But another race wears it, it's, oh my gosh, that's sexy. Yes. It's looked a different way. That's another form of protection, right? It's another form of protection. And I wanted to touch on I wanted to touch on what I think Kat said about these Black women, and Maya, Hanifa said, Black women, not all, saying that we don't need Black men, right? But at the same time, if you're saying you don't need them, yes, don't ask for their protection, because some of these women, and I've seen it, I'm the type of person that, first of all, I'm not going to argue with another person, for one, in public. I'm not going to do it, okay? For two, I'm never, ever going to argue with another man. I'm never going to put myself in that position as if I'm on the same level as that man, and we could go toe to toe. And that is what a lot of these Black women do, right? We could go toe to toe. And you're talking to a man like this? What do you expect him to, how do you expect him to treat you now, to look at you now, right? So these are the things that they're having to deal with as well. So if you're out in the street cussing them out, and you're acting as if you could go toe to toe with them, then they are questioning the protection that they should give to you. If you want to go toe to toe with me, when you go handle that person who's wanting to harm you. You go on ahead, you got it. But the delusion of what women feel is that we're equal to men. We're equal. We could do everything that they could do. No, you cannot. And that's one of the things that we cannot do. We in strength in that way, we cannot. So we need to humble ourselves and understand that if we want that protection in that way, because that's one form of protection, hear me clearly, that is one form of protection, then we need to understand our place. We cannot go toe to toe with another man. And if we understand that how we perceive ourselves in public, like I said, cussing out someone else, you would never find not one video, not one picture of me having an argument with someone in public. The only person that gets the best of me is my husband, because he knows me and he knows how to get under my skin. Okay. But even in that, it's not going to be a cussing out. I have respect for that man. Okay. And there's certain things that I will not say to him, and there's certain ways that I will not speak to him because I have respect for him. So protection, it comes in different forms. And as women, as Black women, yes, I feel that we do need more protection, and it's not just physical. It's not just physical. So Black men, you do need to do a better job. But as Black women, we do need to understand our downfalls as well. So there's two folds to it, right? We can't just say there's one side that needs correcting. Both sides. So that's what I have to say to that.
Someone said in the comment, someone asked a question in the comment section, well, made a comment and said something along the lines of like, we love them or we need them, but they're just embarrassing. My first response within my head was like, and we're not. And when like Black men can make the same claims and they can come with some receipts just as much as us, right? So that's what Kat is saying, is like, we're having this conversation and all we're doing is blaming, right? And no one is willing to come to it. And that's why I'm big on, I really believe that women need to talk to women and men need to talk to men. That's how I feel about that, because I feel like there's so much disdain between the two that it's hard for them to come to a middle ground. So we need men to prepare men to have the actual conversation, right? And women to prepare women to have this, so that when they come to the table, they're coming to the table in a respectful, with a mutual respect, with an understanding that I cannot do this without you and you cannot do this without me. And so therefore, we have no other choice but to work together. Okay, we've seen many movies, or probably know of many stories of people who didn't get along, but in order for them to survive, they had to work together, right? And this is how we need to approach this situation. If we're going to say we need each other, then we have to come to some sort of mutual understanding and mutual respect for each other. You know what I mean? So yeah, just to speak to that, this thing about, because men can say we're embarrassing too. Black men can say Black women are embarrassing, just like how we could say. So it's like, okay, we both believe that each other is embarrassing. Now, what we about to do about this?
Right.
You know what I mean?
So Hanifa, I wanted to ask you, when you said that women need to talk to women and men need to talk to men, in you saying that, do you feel that men should also be talking to women as well?
Okay, I'm not going to say about no subject. Men, for example, what's happening in the manosphere, I don't necessarily have a 100% issue with it, because I really believe if we listen, the men are telling us what their grievances are. If we are listening without feeling the need to have a comeback, or just all emotional about what we're hearing, or even the delivery. I'm going to put that, because men just don't talk the way we do. Men don't address issues the way we do, right? Men don't correct the way we do. And those of us that have children and the fathers are in the home, we understand that, right? That when daddy comes in and puts down the law, it looks different than with us. Okay, we're a little soft and we want to do, the dance around it. Well, men are not like that. So their delivery is not going to be the same. So yes, men can tell us what their grievances are. I don't have any issue with that at all. I draw the line when men begin to come in and tell women about femininity. And the femininity that they're talking about is solely about aesthetics. Because the reality is that there are some people that don't have access to that aesthetic. And because they don't have the access, now they are lumped into, well, then you're masculine. Because the access to the femininity that they're talking about requires resources even, right? It requires a certain look. And I could get deep on this, but I'm on my ad platform. But I'm just
okay. All right. So
yes,
let me.
I think men can talk to women about certain topics, but when I say men need to talk to men, I mean that men need to prepare men and women need to prepare women to come to the table and have a mutually respectful conversation about how are we going to resolve our so-called conflict with each other together.
Right. Okay, so quick plug. So guys, next week we're going to be on Hanifa's platform and we're going to talk about this. Now you got to do it now, Hanifa. We're going to be there. No, but go ahead. I'm sorry, Maya. Go ahead.
No, that was great. Like what both of y'all were saying, it's so needed. And I do I'm gonna have to go in a little bit, but I want us to, and y'all, this is great. Yeah, we're gonna have to do this again. Because we have so much to unpack here. And so I'm gonna be talking to y'all behind the scenes about so how do we as women of different cultures, part of the diaspora, how do we work on strengthening our communities and starting to build and on a smaller scale, I guess. So I think we all kind of said that it kind of needed to be small so we work inward and then go outward. So how do we do that? What are your suggestions? And I want each of you to chime in on that for doing that.
And just to be clear, is the question for you said the diaspora, or is it just women particularly? Just to be clear.
So as a community as a whole, I think having this conversation as far as strengthening our sisterhood for one. I think that's definitely important because just like Hanifa said, we need to be talking to the women, right? We need to be having these conversations with other women because a lot of times we have that concept of like, if I know a lot of women would look at Kat and have an issue with her automatically, not say a word and already have an issue. I know there are some women, Colette, who would hear certain things that you say and automatically have an issue, right? So that's where I want to focus on right now. What do we do as women as a part of creating that sisterhood across the diaspora so that we can start strengthening our communities?
I think I'll just say quickly, I think doing exactly what we're doing here tonight, having honest conversations around these issues. I think that's really the only way to go about it, because us as women, we experience a lot of the same hardships, and we also understand that there's a lot that separates and differences that we have. So I really enjoy these conversations because it's always so good to hear other women's perspectives and their personal experiences. So even for us as women of the diaspora, and as well, I would love to talk to more African American women as well. So I don't know if we ever do this again, where we can kind of maybe open it up and just to hear maybe more of their opinions and see, where they're coming from and the challenges that they face that, we might not experience. Sometimes I find it hard to always have conversations with other women because I know, like we were touching on, I haven't experienced like a lot of the same issues. I haven't maybe dealt with like, I don't know, maybe confidence or self-esteem, things that make women feel that their voice can't be heard. So platforms like this, where we can have these conversations, let women speak and be heard and be respectful, like it is tonight. We're not screaming over each other, we're not bickering. It's been so like just chill and just talking, and that's, I think, the best way to build
That's
that.
very good point, Kat. And opening it up to other women to come and have that conversation. That yes. Hanifa and Colette.
Real quick, I would say, so Hanifa will be doing part 2, and Kat is gonna be doing part 3. So but I would say, apart from having the conversation, is actually doing it. Like, for example, Mayette, like I reached out to you and like, hey, whatever you need, whatever, you know. Hafina, I reached out to you, you know, on your page, hey, whatever you need, let me know, you know. I don't know much, but at least I know that I've been in this YouTube space. I started it before you guys. So what can I give to help? Apart from having the conversation, do it. You know what I mean? Kat, if you have lots of followers, bring them over to me. That will be a help. But you know, just really doing it. And when we get into these spaces where we have to have these conversations with the men, we're not just going to come from a space of we're talking about it. They will actually see the unity, and we could actually tell them, hey, these are the things that you could do, because these are the things that we are doing, you know. So yeah, having actually doing it. And I would say I'm a big person on compliments, right? I love giving other women compliments because I know what it does for us, right? It could just be, Hanifa, I love that lipstick you're wearing, you know? And to her, it kind of like maybe will let her guard down, like, okay, she's not coming for me, you know? Or it could be, Kat, I love that, you know, your cleavage is showing, but I love seeing those cleavage. Just saying, you know, just saying. But, you know, or Mayette, oh my gosh, that color, your head wrap that you're wearing, that's the color for your skin. So doing that as women, it might seem small, but for me, I've seen the impact it made. Young, old, no matter what it is. Like if I see someone and I give them that compliment, it's like, oh wow, thank you, you know, thank you. And they want to more have a conversation now. Like, I don't feel you're a threat some ways, right? So that's a small solution, but it's a big impact, trust me. So that's all I have to add to that.
That was good, Colette, because I agree with you completely. Is that it does allow, it's almost like signaling to the person that I am not your competition. It's like signaling, because we know how women come into spaces, because a lot of us have been raised and socialized and to see each other as competition. You get what I'm saying? A lot of us come from environments, whether it's home environments, that actually, you know, tell us, whether indirectly, you know, whether through like, you know, certain like subliminal messaging, we receive that, you know, we have to compete with other women. So I like what Colette just mentioned, where you come into certain, like for me, I make it I'm very open about, don't bring that African American woman versus other woman nonsense in my space. I'm very clear about that, right? And that's me also like putting out that smoke signal to my Black American sisters that over here, you safe over here, right? You good. That's me, right? And that's why I'm so vocal and passionate about it. So that I agree, Colette. One way is just really, for me, a big one that I see is that we're afraid of each other. We're afraid of each other. We come into Black spaces with preconceived notions and prejudices already. Ma'at, you have your head wrapped, so that I immediately in my mind begin to box you in, right? And you have on ankh earrings, so right, you're a certain type of person, right? Like for example, the other day we heard Bolo TV. For the first time, I was like, oh, really? He said, I am not a religious man, right? But all this time, anyone that has Bola would think so, right? Okay, because we all do it. So I could come into a space and I could see, Colette, right? And it's like, okay, whatever, maybe, I don't know, she have on bright colors. You know what I'm saying? Oh, she like to be seen. Whatever that is. We do this to each other all the time. But I think that we really need to start building the trust between ourselves. We don't trust each other. And you know what I'm saying? We think that as soon as we enter into a space and it gets like a little bit uncomfortable, that somehow it's going to escalate into something ugly. And it can only escalate into something ugly if we allow it, right? So for me, it's more so like not learning to trust each other. And how do you trust each other? You actually have to engage with each other. I'm never going to know Colette if I don't engage Colette. Do you get what I'm saying? If I'm not curious to know about Colette's background or Colette's upbringing, because all of these things matter, right? None of us, we are not a monolith. All of us are coming from different spaces and different experiences and different households, because Colette pointed out, households have their own cultures.
Right.
So you could even be in the same community as someone and still have a different experience, and all of y'all are Black. So really building, like being intentional about building relationship with each other so that we could break down that distrust that we have to be with each other. And my last thing would be like, yo, honestly, and when you hear me say yo, right, is because I'm about to not even care what I'm about to say. Listen. Black woman, start to unplug yourselves from these things that tell you who you should be because you're Black. Unplug from them. Whether it's people you're following on social media, whether it's reality shows that you're watching, whatever that is, unplug from those things that tell you because you are this complexion, you are to show up this way. Because you are this type of woman, Black woman, you have to compete with other Black women. Like unplug from those things. Unplug from those things that are attempting to define your value. Because that's what the competition is about. Everybody is scraping for the scraps of being valued and to be seen as valuable. This is why a cat becomes a threat. Because your value, what you plugged your value into, is actually a detriment to how you see yourself. So when you enter a space with somebody like Cat becomes competition because you've internalized the fact that people like Cat always wins. So you come into the space, we have to begin to unplug from these lies. These lies. It has to start within ourselves. Because if I don't love myself, I cannot really accept you for who you are, because I haven't accepted myself. I'm going to always see you as a threat or a competition. So that's my last thing for the self-development piece. Black women need to start to unplug from these spaces, these people, these places, these machines, you know what I'm saying? These television shows that is trying to define their value using a metric that is anti-Black. That's it.
Thank you. All three of y'all said some great things. And the last piece that I'll add to that is really a mixture of all of the things. I preach that all the time about what we're looking at, because what we look at is what we internalize, what we listen to, because what we listen to, we internalize. And then we have to think about what our children are listening to and what they're looking at, because whatever they're seeing us do, it doesn't matter if you let them watch it or not. They're looking at, they're looking at that. They're listening to that. That must be okay. And so not only are you internalizing that, they're internalizing that. And so these conversations, this was a great conversation. I am so happy that all three of you just came and, and just did this with me. It's a wonderful conversation. I want to have more and more and more of these conversations. And so again, everyone who's in the chat, thank you for coming. And also subscribe to Kat, subscribe to Hanifa, subscribe to Colette Over the Top, WME. They all have great content, and that's, I mean, I met them here in the YouTube arena, and so they're great people, and I'm really like I'm beaming right now. And so thank you all. And so yes, I will be contacting y'all behind the scenes. And everyone, just thank you for coming. Peace, everyone. Peace.
Bye.